بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. My respected brothers and sisters and my little ones, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are gathered here today to make mention of one of the greatest acts that one can do on the day of Eid. It has been reported in a hadith collected by Imam Tirmizi in his Sunan that ما عمل آدمي من عمل يوم النحر أحب إلى الله من إحراق الدم, that there is no action that the son of Adam can do on the day of sacrifice, which is the day of the 10th of Zulhijjah, which is more beloved in the eyes of Allah than the sacrificing of an animal. And then the narrator goes on to say that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam then went on to say that إِنَّهَا لتأتي يوم القيامة بقرونها وأشعارها وأظلافها, that indeed, verily, surely, certainly, on the day of resurrection, this animal that was sacrificed in the name of Allah on Yawmun Nahar, on the 10th of Zulhijjah, on the day of Eid, will come on that day in front of Allah with its horns and with all its hair and with every strand of wool, with every piece of flesh, every drop and ounce of blood will come to be weighed on the scales on that day. And indeed, the reward with Allah, before the blood of this animal touches the ground, the reward is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see, this word udhiyyah, the linguists say that there are 8 ways of pronouncing this word udhiyyah. This word can be pronounced as udhiyyah بتشديد الياء وتخفيفها udhiyyah. It can be pronounced as idhiyyah or idhiyyah. It can be pronounced as dahiyyah or dahiyyah. It can be pronounced as adhatun, and that's where we get the jama of adha, and we say Eid al-Adha. And also the plural of this word is dahaya, like the word hadaya. 8 different ways to say the same word. This is the beauty of the Arabic language itself. You see, lughatan, what this word udhiyyah means, ashat allati tuzbahu dahwatan. That means it is that ram, that goat, that sheep, that animal that is sacrificed fi waqti irtifa' nahar, mid-morning, meaning after tulu' al-fajr. Another meaning that the linguists give of the word udhiyyah is ashat allati tuzbah fi yawm al-adha. It is that goat, that ram, that sheep that is slaughtered and sacrificed on al-yawm al-adha. But what is the meaning in the Sharia? What is the meaning in the istilah? هي ذبح حيوان مخصوص في وقت مخصوص وهي اليوم الأضحى. It is the sacrificial animal that is sacrificed on a day which is specified. So the animal is specific and the day is specific. This is what we refer to as udhiyyah, my brothers and sisters. You see, there are many other sacrificial animals that we know about in our deen. Let me go through a few of them with you. You see, when the pilgrims go for Hajj, and when they put on the ihram, what do? They refrain from clipping their nails, and they refrain from shaving their head. And they also give an animal in sacrifice, but that animal is not called udhiyyah. That animal is referred to as al-hadi, because it is a gift to al-haram al-Makki. So the animal that is given as a gift to the sacred house of Allah, known as al-hadi, is not the same as udhiyyah. Udhiyyah is the sacrificial animal that the entirety of the planet take part in, so that they may also join in that same action as the pilgrims who have gone for Hajj. And to resemble the Hujjaj, what do? We have been commanded and instructed by our Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam that those of you who intend to perform the udhiyyah, then let him not clip his nails or trim his hair until his animal has been sacrificed. Why? Because when we go for Hajj, we do not shave our head, we do not take off the ihram until Yawmun Nahr, which starts on the 10th of Zil Hijjah and ends on the 12th of Zil Hijjah. Once your animal is sacrificed, that's when you go for a haircut. That's when you clip your nails. But what do we see today? You go on the streets of UK, every single barber shop will be packed out on the day of Eid and the night before. Yes, you may argue that it is not an act of obligation according to some scholars. According to some it is, but according to some it's not. Like those who follow the Hanafi madhab, it is not a wajib to refrain from clipping your nails or cutting your hair. However, what we ought to do is not just follow the fara'id and the wajibat. We should try and inculcate every single sunnah, every single preferable act into our lives. The udhiyyah, the command of sacrificing an animal on Yawmun Nahr, this first came about in the 2nd year of Hijrah. After 13 years of persecution in Makkah al-Mukarramah, the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Al-Madinah al-Munawwara. In the 2nd year of Hijrah, this was the very same year that the command of Salah and Zakat came to become fard. And this is the very same year that Udhiyyah became fard. And since then, we continue this practice. But this practice is nothing new. What are the traces of the Udhiyyah? Where does it go back to? Now we all know that the Udhiyyah is a revival of the sunnah of our father Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. Ibrahim was the Khalil of Allah. What is the meaning of Al-Khalil? Khalil is that person whom in his heart has so much love for another that there remains no space, no ounce of a drop of space in the heart for anyone else's love to be instilled in that same heart. That is the meaning of Al-Khalil. And Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, time and time again, proved to Allah and to the entirety of humanity that his love for us, Allah, was equal to none other. You see, Ibrahim did not belong to any one nation. Ibrahim did not belong to Egypt or Palestine or Syria or Jordan. Ibrahim moved around the world throughout his life. Ibrahim was born into a family of idol worshippers. He was born into a family, into a society that worshipped idols. And let this be a lesson to the youth of today, that it doesn't matter if every single person around you is caught up in wrongdoing, that this gives you an excuse to do the same. Let the story of this young boy, Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, who later grew up to become one of the greatest prophets to ever stand foot in this planet Earth. So much so that we only refer to Adam alayhi salatu wasalam as our biological father. But when it comes to all the other Anbiya alayhimus salam, we only refer to Ibrahim alayhi salam as our father in Iman. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, his father's name was Azar. His father used to make idols, he used to shape idols, and used to sell idols. The entire community used to worship idols. As a young boy, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he used to see his people laying down food and drink in front of these idols. And he used to say to them that these idols do not drink, nor do they eat. Why do you put out food in front of them? He used to say to them that these idols cannot even help themselves. Why do you come and make dua to them? And we all know the famous story that when it was their day of Eid and the people went out of the city, Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam remained behind. He broke all the idols. He left the axe on the big idol. And when the people came back and they knew that it was him that had done this act, he said, go and ask your big idol, who did this? What did they say? That cast him into the fire. throw him into the fire. But remember, my brothers and sisters, that Allah is Al-Khaliq. Allah is the creator. Allah is the one who has created the fire. The fire cannot burn without the command of Allah. When they put him into this fire was so much that the narrations mention that they had to put him onto a palm tree to cast him into the fire. This fire was enough to burn down a nation, but it could not burn Ibrahim alayhi salam. Why? When he was cast and when he was thrown into the fire, Allah said, Ya nar kuni bardan wa salaman ala Ibrahim. The old fire become cool and gentle upon Ibrahim. And when he came out of the fire, the people were shocked. The people were struck with amazement. No one came in contact with Ibrahim alayhi salam. He came out free. No smoke, no ashes, no dirt, no burn marks at all. You see, when you put your trust in Allah, Allah will take you out from even the most impossible of scenarios, the most impossible of conditions. You see, these stories are not just fairy tales, my brothers and sisters. These stories hold deep value for us. وَمَا يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. That whomsoever fears Allah, Allah will create an escape plan for him. You watch movies like Escape Plan, Allah will create escape plan if you fear Allah. No matter how hard life becomes, Allah will take you out. Allah can take Ibrahim alayhi salam out of a burning fire. Do you not think Allah can do the same for you? And then as Ibrahim alayhi salam grows up and he's in constant debate with his father, oh my father, why do you worship these idols? And when these arguments come to no avail, he leaves his town. He makes hijrah from his town. And then the story goes on. Time does not permit for me to tell you the full story of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, but let's focus on the main points. We know that when he got married to Hajar alayhi salam, after many years, some narrations mention after 86 years, he made dua, Rabbi habli min as-salihin, that Allah grant me pious children. Some narrations mention he waited over 100 years before Allah bestowed upon him a child. No sooner that this child was born, the instruction and the command came from Allah that take your wife, take your child and leave them in the desert. Take your wife and child and leave them in the desert. Many fathers here today, if ever you are running late from work and your kid was still at school, the teachers are there. The rooms are well managed. You got enough staff looking after your children. They know not to go home until you or your next of kin comes and collects your child. Yet what happens to us? Our blood pressure goes up. We start breaking out in a sweat. We start to phone our wife and we're worried, oh no, my wife's going to kill me, I forgot to pick up the kids. We start phoning every friend on our contact list, every neighbor on our street. I forgot to pick up my daughter, I forgot to pick up my son. But look at this command of Allah. Allah is commanding Ibrahim alayhi salam to leave his wife and his newly born child in the middle of the desert. Now you and I may question what is the wisdom behind this. And there are certain things that your human brain will never ever be able to comprehend. There are certain questions that your intellect will never ever be able to comprehend. Allah has the picture and we have the pixel. So we know from this famous story that Allah yet again came to the help of Hajar alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salatu salam. And we know the famous story of the well of Zamzam. Then later what happened? This area, this barren desert of Makkah al-Mukarramah became fertile because of the water of the well of Zamzam. Then you had a tribe, the Qabila of Jurhum, who came and sought permission to make Makkah their dwelling place. And then Ibrahim alayhi salam, when Allah allowed him to, he used to come back, he used to visit his son, he used to come and go. فَلَمَّا بَلَغَهُ السَّعْيَ. Then when Ismail alayhi salam reached an age where he was able to walk and talk. There are two riwayas. Some say when he reached the age of 7, others say when he reached the age of 12. You see, these numbers are not our problem. What we know is when he was still a child, old enough to talk, old enough to walk, old enough to understand the surroundings around him, old enough to comprehend the actions of people and the world around him. What happens? The command of Allah comes in a dream, in a pious dream, to slaughter his son. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he comes to Ismail alayhi salam and he says, Ya bunay, that, oh my son, inni ara fil manam, indeed I have seen in a dream, anni azbahuk, that I am to slaughter you, I am to sacrifice you, I am to put a knife to your throat. And what does his son say? Ya abati, that, oh my father, Ya abati, if'al ma tu'mar, oh my father, do as Allah has commanded you. Satajiduni, you will find me, insha'Allah min as-sabirin, insha'Allah min as-sabirin, you will find me, God willing, to be from amongst those who are patient. فَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَا, when they both completely surrendered to Allah, وَتَلَّهُ لِلْجَبِينَ, and the knife came into contact with his neck, what did Allah do? Allah saved Ismail alayhi salam. وَفَدَيْنَاهُ بِذِبْحٍ عَظِيمٍ, we ransomed him with a great sacrifice. Now put yourself in the shoes of Ibrahim and Ismail alayhim salam. No human being, no son of Adam will ever be commanded to do such a big sacrifice like that of Ibrahim and his son Ismail alayhim salam. So every year when it is the day of Eid and when we do our qurbani, you see the word qurbani, a Persian and an Urdu word, which means to sacrifice, the traces of which come from the Arabic word al-Qurban, which means to do an act of nearness to Allah. Any act of obedience that you do to gain proximity to Allah, whether it be to slaughter an animal or whether it be something else, this is what it means by the word Qurban. So when we say Qurbani, when we say Udhiyyah, we remember the patience and the sacrifice and the complete submission of Ibrahim alayhi salam. You see, the word Muslim has a special link with Ibrahim alayhi salam. The word Islam itself has a special link with Ibrahim alayhi salam. In fact, the entire religion of Islam has a very unique link with Ibrahim alayhi salam. More so, even the 5 pillars of Islam have a special link with Ibrahim alayhi salam. Now let's look into this further. What does Allah say in the Quran? Millat abikum Ibrahim, huwa sammakumul muslimin. It was Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam who chose the word Muslim for us. It was none other than Ibrahim alayhi salam who chose the word Muslim for us. And the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam proves how to submit and shows and demonstrates how we as an ummati of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who was upon the millah, upon the religion and the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam, how we should surrender our nafs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How we should sacrifice all our desires for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with no questions asked. You see, many a times, living in the West, when it comes time for Ramadan, and you're fasting, and you go to work, and you're questioned, not even water, and then we think, scientific reasons, how can I explain my fast using scientific causes? No. We fast in the month of Ramadan. Why? Because Allah has asked us to do so. Sami'na wa ata'na. We go for Hajj. Why? Sami'na wa ata'na. The way, why do we sacrifice an animal on the day of Eid before anything else, سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. This is the command of Allah. How is it the command of Allah? Open up the Quran, open up the shortest surah that we all love reading in every rakat of every salah. إِنَّا أَعْطَيْنَاكَ الْكَوْثَرَ فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. This is your proof. We know that Udhiyyah is proven by ijma' bil kitabi wa sunnah. So the verse of the Quran where Allah says, فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. So pray, you offer your salah to your Lord and sacrifice an animal on the day of Eid. This is a command from Allah. Also, if you look into the hadith, you open up the Sahih of Imam Muslim and you read the hadith narrated to us by Hazrat Anas radiallahu anhu, in which he told us that ضحى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بكبشين أملحين أقرنين, that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم on the day of Eid, he slaughtered 2 rams, black and white color, who had horns. And then we look further into the hadith, and the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said in the hadith collected by Imam Ibn Majah in his Sunan and Imam Hakim in his Mustadrak, that whomsoever has the means, man kana lahu sa'a, whomsoever has the financial means to perform the qurbani, to perform the udhiyyah, walam yudahi, and he does not perform the udhiyyah, fala yaqrubanna musallana, let him not come near to our place of salah. So this is a proof that the performance of Udhiyyah, that sacrificing an animal on the day of Eid, is a command from Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. You see, there is a difference of opinion with regards to the superiority of the level of the obligation. Scholars like Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah and his student Imam Muhammad rahmatullah alayhi and his other student Imam Zufar rahimahullah were all of the opinion that it is wajib to perform the udhiyyah for one who has the ability to do so. Other scholars like Imam Shafi rahimahullah and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and from one of the narrations from Qadi Abu Yoosuf rahmatullah alayh, was that it is a sunnah mu'akkada. But whichever way you look at it, whether you call it a sunnah mu'akkada, whether you call it a wajib, all scholars unanimously agree that this act of udhiyyah is proven and established both by the Quran and the sunnah. So let's look at some of the technical aspects of the udhiyyah itself. So the udhiyyah, as we know, is wajib upon every mature, sane Muslim who is not a Shari'i traveller. So if you are travelling, the same way the Salatul Jummah is exempt for a traveller, similarly, if you are a traveller on the 3 days of Eid, so 10th, 11th and 12th of Dhul Hijjah, then you do not need to perform udhiyyah. However, it is still virtuous and still recommended that if you have the means to do so, that you do so. The udhiyyah is a wajib upon every male and female. It is not necessary for the man to pay for his wife and his children who have reached the age of puberty, except if they have knowledge and they approve of you giving on their behalf. Now, what do we mean by a person who has the financial means to do so? Unlike zakat, a lunar year is not required for udhiyyah. Same as sadaqatul fitr. If you own 87.48 grams of gold or 612.36 grams of silver or its equivalent, then that means you are considered well off, you are considered wealthy, and you must pay the udhiyyah if you have that amount of wealth in your possession on any one of the 3 days. So if you are completely poor on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, but you want some money, someone gifted you some money on the 11th of Eid money, you got Eid on Eid day. So you were poor before, but Eid day you went to your uncle's house, your uncles gave you some money. So the next day, it's still day of udhiyyah, you have to give udhiyyah. So if you become the malik of a nisab on the 10th, or the 11th, or the 12th, you must give udhiyyah. You are not allowed to give charity in exchange for udhiyyah. I don't mean giving charity in other countries who are performing udhiyyah on your behalf. That is perfectly fine. But to give money in charity, like someone who's terminally ill during Ramadan and they don't have the hope for fasting ever again in their life, what do? They give fidyah. They give money in exchange for the fast. This does not apply in udhiyyah. For udhiyyah, you must sacrifice an animal. Either you do it yourself, unfortunately, we can't. So you give the money to someone else, you make them your wakil, and they do it on your behalf. So when you're giving money to charity organizations who do udhiyyah on your behalf, that's perfectly permissible. However, if you want to give charity just for any other cause in the world, maybe to help earthquake victims, in exchange of your udhiyyah, that is not permissible. Unless you missed many udhiyyah many years that have passed, or you missed this year out of forgetfulness or whatever other reason, then you are allowed to give the amount of a sacrificial animal for the years missed. So I hope that covers the technical aspects of udhiyyah. Coming back to the lessons of udhiyyah. So we know about the history of udhiyyah. We know about the linguistics of the word udhiyyah. We know about when udhiyyah first came about in our deen. And we know about when the traces of udhiyyah go back to the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Now let's look a bit deeper and let's look at the spiritual aspect of udhiyyah. You see, many may question about the act of sacrificing animals itself. We have many Muslims today who are taking Western views that are un-Islamic as their own view, such as becoming a vegan. So there are many people living in the West today who will say this is cruelty to animals. That you Muslims every year, you sacrifice all of these animals who have not committed any sins. What are you doing, O Muslims? So the answer must be, first and foremost, that we as Muslims believe that we are the creation of Allah and the animals too are the creation of Allah. And Allah and His Rasul have commanded us all year round not to only be good to humans, to animals, to the plants, to the environment, to absolutely everything. Why? Because Allah has created us. وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. We have been created as vicegerents, as stewards, as caretakers of this planet that we live in. So you want to teach us about cruelty to animals, let us teach you about cruelty to the entire planet. So when it comes to the act of sacrificing animals, this is in effect a mubalagha. What we mean by that is emphasizing the command of Allah and the hukum of Allah, that Allah has created animals for the benefit of mankind. How do animals benefit mankind? From them we get food and nourishment. And then from the skin of the animal we can make utensils and things that are beneficial to mankind. Now there are times of the year, like the time of Udhiyyah, that this act becomes wajib. Why? So that we can show and we can exemplify this act and this command of Allah, and we can prove that Allah, that we believe and we submit ourselves that yes, Allah, and we can actually show in reality that these animals are beneficial to mankind. It's actually harmful to leave the animals without performing Udhiyyah. Have you ever thought of this? If we did not perform Udhiyyah to all those thousands of animals that inhabit our planet, what would become of the planet and what would become of these animals? And the act of slaughter in Islam, there are very strict conditions, such that the knife must be sharp. It must not be sharpened in front of the animal. There are strict conditions of the type of animal that is accepted for Udhiyyah. You are not allowed to choose an animal that is blind or blind in one eye. You are not allowed to select an animal for udhiyyah whose ear is cut off or whose tail is cut off. You are not allowed to choose for udhiyyah an animal whose horns are missing from its root. You are not allowed to select for your udhiyyah an animal who is crippled, who has 3 legs, who cannot walk himself to the place of slaughter. You see, in the world, before the advent of Islam and even till this day, there were many people, many polytheistic religions who would offer children as sacrifice to their gods. But the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, what does that prove? That it is not necessary to sacrifice another human being to gain nearness to Allah. Allah tells us in the Quran, the meat, the blood, none of it reaches Allah. But what reaches Allah? Taqwa minkum. It is the piety that reaches Allah. So when Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he put the sword on the neck of Ismail alayhi salam, and Allah swapped it with a ram from paradise, with a ram from Jannah, and then a voice called out, وَنَادَيْنَاهُ أَيَّا إِبْرَاهِيمُ قَدْ صَدَّقْتَ الرُّؤْيَا. And we called out, O Ibrahim, you have made the dream come true. So the story of Ibrahim and Ismail alayhim salam, what does it prove to the idol worshippers? What does it prove to the polytheists in the world? That if you want to gain nearness to your Creator, if you want to become close to your God, sacrificing people and children is not by any means the way to do so. So it takes away from the world this crime and this act of disobedience. There are many wisdoms behind the act of udhiyyah itself. Another one is that it brings about the community together. If you think about when we sacrifice an animal on the day of Eid, we are commanded to keep a third for ourselves, give a third to your family and friends, and give a third to those people who are poor. Now when you look at animals that are sacrificed in the name of idols, those animals are not touched after they are killed. So in the Islamic ritual of udhiyyah, there is benefit for mankind. There is benefit for the poor. It brings about silatul rahim. It brings about kinship. It brings about brotherhood. It brings about love and community in the family. It brings the whole society together. You see, when you look into the rituals of Islam, all you will find is benefit after benefit after benefit. But the talk today is not about what are the benefits of udhiyyah. What we should take, the outcome of this should be وَجَاهِدُوا فِي اللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ. What is the last ayah of Surah Al-Hajj? وَجَاهِدُوا فِي اللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ. That struggle in the way of Allah as you should struggle, in the way that Allah deserves for you to struggle in His path. And Allah will not make any difficulty upon you. And what does Allah say? You are from the millah of Ibrahim. You are from the millah of Ibrahim. Allah is commanding us to struggle in the way of Allah, and Allah wants us to remember our father Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. That look, when he was cast into the fire could not burn him. When the knife hit the neck of Ismail, the knife lost its ability to cut. Remember, my brothers, we the creation can do nothing without the help of our Creator, but our Creator Allah can do each and everything without the help of us. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.